Thank you so much. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining this afternoon. My name is Becky Ryan. I'm the North Coast Office Director with the Coastal Conservation League. We are here to talk about Ride 4, as it is currently known. It's a proposed sales tax referendum for transportation projects in Horry County, with impacts stretching into Georgetown and Marion. I know we have some folks from those counties on as well, so thank you for being here. This will be most likely on the ballot in Horry County, but you all should have a say as well and know what's going on, as, like I said, you will be feeling the impacts of these proposed projects. So we are joined today by representatives from the Southern Environmental Law Center, the Friends of Coastal South Carolina, Winyah Rivers Alliance, and American Rivers. I'm going to be starting off the conversation with just an overview of where we're at and what is currently being proposed, and then I'll pass it over to Emily to talk about some of the legal side of things, permitting issues with the transportation projects. We will be taking questions. Feel free to put those in the chat as we go along, but we will save that for Q&A at the end. And then, we may have some time if you'd like to go ahead and submit comments. For those of you who are Horry County residents, we'd be happy to provide any feedback, any brainstorming for what you'd like to include in those comments, and we will talk about that more later. So just to give you some background on the Coastal Conservation League, for those who may not be familiar with us, we are an environmental advocacy nonprofit. Like I said, I'm the North Coast Office Director for our North Coast region. That includes Horry, Georgetown, Marion, Florence, and Williamsburg counties. Also on today is Trapper Fowler, our North Coast Project Manager. Our office is based out of the Coastal Carolina University's Coastal Science Center in Conway, but we are your local representatives for the Coastal Conservation League. So what we're talking about today is this RIDE program. Currently, we're up to RIDE 3. That stands for Road Improvement and Development Effort. It's all of Horry County's local transportation projects. There is a current sales tax that is set to expire next year, April 30th. And so they have been discussing for the last year or so how to extend that beginning May 1st of 2025. They want no gap in collecting sales tax to go towards transportation projects. The sales tax currently only applies to retail sales, and groceries are excluded. Those details, as far as I know, have not been finalized for this RIDE 4 discussion, but hopefully that will continue. So RIDE 3, these were the projects that were on the list. Like I said, this was an ongoing sales tax that's been going on for the last 8 years. It passed in 2016 with 69% of the vote. These were the projects that were on the list. Not all of them have been completed. So, for example, this SC 31 extension to North Carolina has not even been started. And it is over budget. So the RIDE 3 program as a whole is over budget. So the RIDE 4 currently is proposed to include $150 million to finish these projects before even starting new projects. So some geographic diversity for these projects that were on the last referendum. What we're looking at now is, rather than the 8-year capital project sales tax, Horry County is looking at a 25-year transportation tax to begin May 1st. They estimate it will raise about $5.5 billion. The project list is at around 6.1, 6.2 billion for what they're currently proposing. They do hope to get 1.1 billion from state and federal funds, but that has not been promised. That has not been allocated from those sources. But they're looking at a total of about $6.6 billion that they would like to spend over the next 25 years for these road projects. It started conversations a year or so ago with a 18-member RIDE 4 advisory committee with representatives from each district and municipality within Horry County. It has now gone to a 6-member sales tax commission So that has one representative from Conway, one representative from Myrtle Beach, one from North Myrtle Beach, and then 3 from Horry County. And they will be finalizing this list of projects. They will then send that to Horry County Council, who will take 3 readings on an ordinance. We expect the first will be coming up in May. And Horry County really just does an up or down vote on the recommended list from the Sales Tax Commission. And then if that ordinance is passed, it will be on the ballot in November for the general election. The language for it has to be finalized by August in order for it to make the ballot. So that's the timeline that we're looking on for this sales tax referendum. So here is the map of the current proposed projects. You can see this dotted line that represents the general area for the proposed SC Highway 22 extension, formerly called the Southern Evacuation Lifeline. There is not a fixed route for it, so it's just somewhere in that area. And then again, for this yellow color, that is what they are proposing for a Conway River crossing. It is on the list at $860 million. The Lake Busby bypass that has previously been proposed could be in there. They are looking at either side of 501. They do not have any sort of route identified for that one. But that is just the general area of where they would like to see another river crossing. And then you can see we've got a lot down here in the Myrtle Beach area, some up in North Myrtle Beach, nothing for this area of the county, nothing for the South Strand besides the SC Highway 22 extension. There's 701 North widening. There's not 701 South widening. There's not improvements to the 501 business or bypass bridges. There are a lot of projects that are not on this list. And so we do have some concerns for this project list and this 25-year transportation sales tax. Like I said, they have to finalize the project list, and then we are committed to those projects for 25 years. And it would not be able to be amended except through another ballot referendum, potentially. Whereas, 25 years trying to figure out where the needs are going to be in 2050 for Horry County is a bit of a challenge, just at how fast Horry County is growing. We think that the 8-year capital project sales tax gives us more of a chance to reassess where the needs are. 25 years ago, Highway 90, for example, would not have been a priority, but it certainly is now for those residents along that area. 25 years is a long time just at the rate that Horry County is growing. Currently, the South Carolina Office of Resilience estimates a 72% population growth just from 2020 to 2035. A lot of that's coming to the Carolina Forest area, but who knows by 2050 where the needs will be. And our belief is that the priorities really should be on improving our existing roads and bridges. This map shows you the roads that were closed during Hurricanes Matthew and Florence. Many of them from flooding, not necessarily all of them. Some of them may have been tree limbs that were down, but there were a lot of roads and bridges that did flood and were closed for a week or longer that have not been improved in the interim since Hurricane Florence. We just in December with that nor'easter had about another 20 roads in Horry County that were closed due to flooding, and schools closed as a result as well. So we really do want to see those issues prioritized over building any new roads and bridges. We need to improve what we have right now and make sure that it is resilient before we talk about new interstates or highways. And that is currently the discussion. So on this list of about $6 billion worth of projects, $1.56 billion of it is proposed just for that SC Highway 22 extension that I mentioned that was formerly called the Southern Evacuation Lifeline. That name has changed because it is not a true evacuation route, and the U.S. Army Corps of engineers has required them to change the name. So it's now called the SC Highway 22 extension. Doesn't roll off the tongue quite as well. But this is proposed to connect from Highway 22, go around through the Waccamaw National Wildlife Refuge, through Bucksport, into Burgess, down to 707 or 17. So we do think that that would bring new impacts for Western Horry County in terms of large subdivisions coming to a largely rural area, like what we've seen with the Highway 90 corridor after the paving of International Drive. That area has exploded in growth, and we think that a new highway, 4-lane highway, like the SC Highway 22 extension would lead to similar growth for Western Horry County. And that area, as it is right now, could probably fit 3 Carolina forests, which is just unbelievable to think. Even if it doesn't bring that level of new growth, these areas, Bucksport and Burgess, have already experienced flooding. Especially Bucksport has had major flooding events almost every year since 2015. Adding a new highway would certainly exacerbate those flooding concerns. And there is an alternative. As I mentioned, the Lake Busby bypass, as it's proposed, would connect to the Conway Perimeter Road that was under Ride 3. So it would be a route all the way from 378 up in Conway, up by the El Bethel Road in the Walmart area off of 501, all the way down to 544 near the Bojangles or that new Crooked Oak RV park. So it would be a new river crossing, and it is proposed at a fraction of the cost of the SC Highway 22 extension at just $362 million. Without going through the Waccamaw National Wildlife Refuge or Bucksport or Burgess. So there are alternatives that do meet the same suggested need of a new river crossing without the costs and without those environmental and community impacts. And then the other one that's on the list, I-73. Both of these projects have been discussed for 30 or more years. I-73 was originally supposed to connect all the way to Michigan. That is completely off the table. Now the plan is just to connect from I-95 outside of Latta to SC Highway 22. And Horry County has it on the project list for Ride 4 at just the Horry County portion from 22 to the Marion County line at $450 million. So there is no plan right now for any state or federal funding to connect it to I-95. And you know, even the Horry County side, it would go through acres of wetlands and streams and cross over the Little Petey River and go through the Little Petey Heritage Preserve. And essentially the route parallels 501. So certainly we would rather see upgrades to 501 rather than a new interstate with, again, major environmental and community impacts at an exorbitant price tag. So just to give you an idea of where we're talking about, again, there's no final route for the SC Highway 22 extension. A feasibility report came out in August of last year from SCDOT, looking at 16 possible routes. 10 of those go through Bucksport. 4 of them would go through the existing Waccamaw National Wildlife Refuge, let alone the future boundaries, the acquisition boundary. The most likely route is along here. So going through the refuge into Bucksport, crossing the river here at Bucksport and Burgess, and then connecting to 17 bypass. So like we said before, even though Horry County is considering these projects for the sales tax referendum, they would be felt in the surrounding counties. So this project would certainly be felt in Georgetown County on the Waccamaw Neck. 17 bypass already has congestion issues. The intersection at 707 and 17 is already at a failing grade. We would see a lot of new traffic coming into the Waccamaw Neck. And then with I-73, It would certainly have impacts on Marion County and even up into Dillon County. So this is the route for the entirety of the interstate. And this is the portion that they're talking about just for the Horry County sales tax referendum. So this is SC 22 here, and it would just be going up to the Marion County line. And this little segment would cost an estimated $450 million. So with that, I will pass it over to Emily with the Southern Environmental Law Center.
Thanks, Becky. So I just wanted to give a quick kind of permitting update on the two projects that Becky just described, the 22 extension and I-73. So even though the 22 extension has been proposed and around for a long time, and federal and state agencies have kind of started the environmental review process and the permitting process, and then it has gone away and popped back up over the years, we are still at the very beginning of the approval process for the SC 22 extension. So the county and SCDOT have made clear that they're going to be restarting the environmental review process under the National Environmental Policy Act, and that will mean doing an entirely new environmental impact statement. It'll mean having scoping meetings where they sort of get an understanding for the full host of concerns and impacts that the communities who will be impacted by this project are concerned about. They will have multiple public meetings. There will be drafts of the environmental review documents detailing all of the environmental impacts that will come from this project. And all of that is going to be required before they can get their federal permits for the project. So, this project is certainly not a done deal. There are going to be multiple opportunities to weigh in on the route of the project, which, as Becky mentioned, is not fixed, to change the project, to completely oppose the project. On behalf of the league, as well as the Association for the Betterment of Bucksport, SCLC has already sent a letter to the Army Corps of Engineers emphasizing the importance of involving the Bucksport community and other communities that are impacted by the project in these environmental review and public hearing processes. So, this ride for sales tax and the funding that it would provide for the project would be a huge, it would be a huge win to stop that from happening. If the vote to fund SC 22 extension this fall is no, I think that would be a huge win in stopping this from moving forward. That being said, there are going to be a ton of opportunities following this fall's election to stop and weigh in and change this project. So I would just ask that everyone on the phone stay informed and follow the league's updates on this project, and be involved where you can on the 22 extension. And just, we don't know specific dates or a timeline yet for any of these public hearings I was talking about. We just know that they will happen, and we will certainly get the word out to folks once we have dates and times and more information about the permitting process. So with I-73, this is in sort of an opposite posture of the SC 22 extension. I-73 is fully permitted. The League and Southern Environmental Law Center were involved in litigation a few years ago, and that litigation has concluded. The project has their permits, and essentially they're waiting for the funding to start building the project. And so, as this slide points out, the best chance in keeping this project from moving forward is to keep it off the ride for list, which is what the vote will be this November. And so this vote is, it's important for both projects. It's really critical for the I-73 project. And with that, I can pass it over to Grace with Friends of Coastal South Carolina.
Thank you so much. And that was amazing information, Becky and Emily. Really appreciate it. So I'm Grace Gaspard. I'm Executive Director of Friends of Coastal South Carolina. We are the Friends Group to Waccamaw National Wildlife Refuge, and I speak today on behalf of our membership and supporters of Waccamaw National Wildlife Refuge. And our concerns are twofold, really, twofold, but one at the same time. We're very concerned about the potential ecological impacts to the refuge, and it's truly unthinkable that there are still 15 alternatives for this project. It hasn't been any further narrowed down prior to funding, but with potential proposed routes directly impacting the refuge, that is something that is truly not acceptable. So it's the direct impacts to the refuge, and it's also the indirect impacts. So whether or not a route is chosen that doesn't go directly through the refuge is still going to impact the surrounding rural areas profoundly. And the refuge doesn't exist in a vacuum. Any of those impacts to surrounding lands will impact the refuge. And the mission of the National Wildlife Refuge System is to protect biodiversity, and it's to protect the most critical habitat for the most endangered species. A big part of what Waccamaw has been trying to do is to protect contiguous tracts of habitat that are necessary for larger species like black bears. So aside from, the refuge protects for everything from black bears to Raffin-esque big-eared bats. And so the biodiversity is something that all life depends on, including us. So, that leads to the second concern, which is the communities and the health of the ecosystem that surrounds them. So we're really concerned with this project about I-73 and SC-22, taking priority over possibly taking priority in funding over projects like the Bugsby bypass that would actually help to eliminate flooding in Conway and would help to ease the traffic congestion that people are dealing with every day. So we are absolutely, as Becky said, supporting, fixing existing problems first, and there are plenty of those, before spending billions on something that's just going to cause a tremendous amount of environmental degradation that's going to impact our communities. The refuge is an important economic driver for the communities. It provides the drinking water resource for the entire Grand Strand region. And that's a pretty, jeopardizing a resource like that truly does jeopardize our communities. And large projects like I-73 and the SC-22 extension have only been shown to make traffic congestion worse, to make flooding problems worse. An acre of wetlands can store up to 1 million gallons of stormwater. And of the SC-22 alternatives, I think up to 300, over 300 acres of wetlands could be impacted. And, that's 300 million gallons of stormwater that has to go somewhere. And there's a really good chance it's going to be into somebody's, house and neighborhood. So protecting the floodplains around the refuge is what helps to protect our communities for flooding. And while we've had bad flooding without the lands the refuge protects, it would be much worse. So our concern is certainly for the biodiversity the refuge is trying to protect, and the threatened endangered species and corridors of contiguous habitat that would be disrupted, but it's equally for the impacts that this would have on the community, Bucksport, and the surrounding, the businesses there. The fact that the southern, nothing has been proposed to address the impacts that SC 22 would have to the southern part of 701, and that's a road that, you know, the timber industry relies on. And, you know, what would happen with no improvements there and the increased traffic. So we feel like it's just very ill thought out in terms of the long-term impacts. And we're supporting, you know, obviously not favoring anything that goes through the refuge, but we're supporting fixing, you know, all the problems that exist now. There's a lot of, there'll be a lot of rhetoric about the economic impacts of this road, but in the end, 100% of our economy is 100% dependent on our natural environment. And one way or another, you can always circle back to that, especially in this part of the country. So we feel like these two projects would do a lot more damage to our communities and to our wildlife refuge, which is an irreplaceable resource.
Thank you so much, Grace. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So now we have a video from Deborah Buffkin, the Executive Director of Winyah Rivers Alliance. She was not able to join us today, but she recorded a message for y'all.
Hi, I'm Deborah Buffkin, Executive Director of Winyah Rivers Alliance. We are a nonprofit conservation organization, and we work hard to protect, monitor, and revitalize the health of the lands and the waters of the Greater Winyah Bay watershed, also known as the Lower Petey Basin. Sorry I couldn't be there today. I'm at a PACE conference for UNC Pembroke in Greensboro. But right now, I'm videoing the day before. I'm here on the Little Petey River, this amazing river, the cypress knees and the cypress trees. And if you hear 501 is behind me. So I'm here at Gallivan's Ferry at the landing here on the Little Petey River. And as a riverkeeper organization, it is very important. Wetland protection and water quality is they're very important to us, and we know how important those are to the communities that live along the river. The wetlands, they filter our water. And the water quality, we have to have clean water in order to fish and swim and to recreate along these rivers. So that's what Winyah Rivers Alliance does. We work to protect these rivers and make sure they're clean for you and your families and the communities to swim and to enjoy. Now, I know that Trapper and Becky and the rest of the crew, I know they told you about the this Ride 4 sales tax that they're trying to pass. Well, a few comments on that. I believe that we need to repair our roads first. I believe our roads are in terrible condition. I live in Horry County, and when we have a little bit of rain, all the bridges and the roads around my house flood, and it's like an island. No one can come in, no one can come out. So I strongly believe that we need to repair our roads first of all before we go building any major highways. And then we start talking about, let's talk about I-73, for example. I know they're proposing to put about $450 million into this 22 extension to go to Marion County for I-73. Now, I want you to think about this. These people along the communities on the Little Petey River and Nichols upstream from this proposed crossing on 917 on the Little Petey River. Got upstream's Nichols, downstream we have the Brent's Neck community, we have Cartwheel. All these areas have already flooded. We know the water levels rise. I mean, that's a given. But these areas have flooded. So for them to go across the Little Petey River, they're going to destroy wetlands. They're going to go and destroy part of a heritage preserve. That land is supposed to be protected anyway. And they're going to make the flooding for these communities even worse. And they've already lost everything, like my parents who flooded during Hurricane Matthew and Hurricane Florence, lost everything twice. And they're a mile off the Little Petey River. So I grew up on this river, and I do love this river. But as a Winyah Rivers Alliance, representing with Winyah Rivers Alliance, and also as a member of the community that lives along the rivers, and also as an Horry County citizen, I strongly believe we need to fix our roads, first of all. And second of all, we need to remove this 22 connecting $450 million from this Ride 4 sales tax proposal. I-73 should have never gone the direction that it's going in. It should have gone on from 38 to 501 like it was initially proposed. But no, it's a 4-lane highway here, 501 behind me. Highway 9 is a 4-lane highway. 917 is a 2-lane highway. And it's going to take farmlands, a lot of houses, and it's going to destroy a lot of wetlands, and it's going to cause some animal, wildlife fragmentation. It's going to be disastrous for the communities along the river because it's going to make the flooding worse. So, what did we learn here today? We've learned that we need to fix our roads first, and second of all, we need to remove the 22 connector and the to the I-73 to Marion County. We need to remove that off this proposal altogether. But fix our roads first. I mean, we don't know in 25 years what we're going to need and what we aren't going to need. So, let's let our councilmen know. Let's let this committee know to fix our roads first, and to look at a different direction for I-73 to come across instead of Little Petey River. Anyway, I've kept you guys long enough. I thank you so much, and I'm sorry about the noise from 501, but I hope you have a great day, and I'm gonna leave you with a little view of the Little Petey River.
Thank you so much to Deborah. And now I will pass it to Dylan.
Yeah, hey everybody. My name is Dylan Coleman. I'm the project coordinator for the Lynches, Great Petey, and the Little Petey River, working with Winyah Rivers Alliance. You can see in that video that Deborah my boss, was standing along the river at Galavant's Ferry. And just to add some context to her mention of the flooding that happened during Hurricane Matthew and Hurricane Florence, just to give you an idea about how bad it's gotten on that river. When those hurricanes hit both occasions, the water level hit 17 feet. Just for context, 12 feet is considered a major flood stage on that river. So what we've seen in the past probably 30, 40 years, we've seen an increase in water levels on a pretty regular basis with storm water and our regular hurricanes that roll in every season. But that's a result of so much more development coming in, and also, of course, climate change. We know that when there's development, especially along the waterways, whether it be wetlands or rivers, there's the possibility of sediment deposition and erosion that's going to alter not only possibly the flow of the river itself, but also can increase flooding just because there's less room in the river to hold all that water. And like she said, we've seen that before with these floods that come after these hurricanes. And there's been people even today that still have not gotten back to their homes in these rural communities, especially in places like Nichols or even in Britton's Neck. Those houses are still sitting on stilts, empty and gutted because people can't move back and they've had to find new places to live. And it's drained our communities in a lot of ways because there's just so much going on with those rivers when it comes to holding all this water, and an extension through the Little Petey, either through the wetlands or over the river, is just going to exacerbate that issue. Other than that, too, when you bring in new development, especially when it comes to roads, you're bringing in impervious surfaces, which means that the water is not going to soak into the ground. It's going to have more potential to gather up all the bad things that come out of our cars or that we throw out of windows, whatever it might be. So that means worse water quality, means the potential for bacteria. It means the potential for things like PFAS or other microplastics or forever chemicals getting into the water and hurting wildlife, hurting the communities that live along those rivers. And that river in particular, the Little Petey River, is a very important river, especially to Horry County and to Marion County and even Dillon County and wherever it goes. That area of those counties is relatively rural and relatively poor. There's not a lot going on there. You'd be hard-pressed to find someone in those communities that doesn't have a very fond memory, whether it's going fishing with their grandfather, dad, whoever it might be, spending time with friends during the summertime. It's a very important place in the state and in these communities. And if there is some sort of development, a major development along that river or through the wetlands, be it the erosion or the water quality problem, you can see problems with accessibility, with impacts to health for the people that live there, that recreate there, and the wildlife that they're interacting with on a daily basis whenever they're out recreating. So the main issue here, though, is that with I-73, a lot of the draw was, of course, that, hey, it's going to be able to get to the beach quicker. There's going to be more development coming in. But I think the best option for the people that this is going to affect, because at the end of the day, the residents of Horry County especially are going to have to deal with the consequences of this development, be that flooding, problems with water quality, degradation of the wildlife. They're going to be the ones that have to deal with the consequences, not the new businesses that are coming in, the tourists that are coming in on this new highway. So at the end of the day, it lies with all of us, specifically to speak our piece, what our thoughts are, because this is going to affect them in the long term. Obviously, this tax is going to be 25 years. There's no telling when this development will happen, but they're going to be the ones that are going to deal with it in the long term. So I definitely encourage people to opt for repairing the roads we have and improving them. Like Becky said at the beginning, there was so many road closures during these last storms, especially even recently. And I think a lot of people would much rather be able to access their own roads other than waiting for a new road to be built. It's going to cost them a lot of taxpayer money. It's in the interest of the community to think about how this is going to affect them in the long term, and to remember that this is probably the best option for them, to opt for fixing what we have now instead of making it worse. And I think I thank everybody for being here today, and I'm gonna go ahead and pass it on to Cheryl Kale.
Thank you, Dylan. Yes, my name is Cheryl Kale. I am an associate director in the North Coast for American Rivers. And I also hold a unique role as the acting chief of the Waccamaw Indian people. So I want to shift gears a little bit, as we've had a lot of the conversation that's centered on very important components to why these projects need to be evaluated. Alternatives need to be considered, and that opens that conversation to cultural sustainability. And if we think about that, it's how human lives are actually involved in the context of everything. It's not I think somebody said, not it's a vacuum. When there is an imbalance in that circle of what we're doing, whether it's leaning too much on the economic development, it foregoes the impacts to the environment. And for as an Indigenous person, and I think pretty much everybody here, we realize and recognize that when we are impacting the environment, the ecosystem becomes imbalanced, and that causes human impacts, human health impacts, and cultural impacts. And identifying that in a way where, if we think of cultural sustainability, that society itself bases everything on culture, where things have gone awry is when the focus became on economic development. So we see this projects that are, the driving agenda is economic development, bringing more tourists in, bringing in more manufacturing, which was a direct quote from Kent Williams. And that imbalance, or that driving agenda, then causes the other issues, which are environmental issues, and later, as Dylan mentioned, human health impacts, to be disregarded, because that agenda is not future thinking, not being responsible in how these things are happening. So I would like to say, for my initial engagement in a public scoping meeting 17 years ago was, I think, I don't remember what they called it, the 701 connector. It's had different names, and knowing that it was going to be going through what I understood and know to be historic Waccamaw lands, and that is within the Waccamaw Refuge, I felt that that was just not acceptable to impact the land that is currently protected. So my realization of how things have played out in history for the Waccamaw, for the PD, for the tribes that are exist in South Carolina, is that culture was not considered. And culture is such a huge component of everything that we do. keeping that sustainability for everybody, for not just humans, but for all life. And we consider the rivers to be also life. All of these things are in a circle, and we are essentially trying to encompass one piece of this project to identify why it's not a good project. I want to address that emphatically, that the efforts to continue to disregard and erase the Waccamaw, particularly as existing today, that is not something that's new. When development came about 300 years ago, that was the narrative that was presented. In 2009, during the historic survey, that was amplified again as though we did not exist, as being eradicated from 1720, although we are, as of 2005, a state-recognized tribe. So culturally, it is relevant because community matters. Erasing a community is erasing part of culture and part of what's significant and what keeps a community cohesive. We see that potentially happening in Bucksport as that comes through with heightened development from a road and the impacts to the community that is making every effort to strive and be a part of what could be done responsibly, rather than what's driven by just economic factors. So I want to amplify the importance of taking a moment to acknowledge that cultural sustainability needs to be factored in to what is going forward, what is being proposed, and also why these are not good projects to be moving on. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Becky, for letting me have the time to speak.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Cheryl. So just to share my screen one more time with some important upcoming dates. So there is one more public meeting hosted by Horry County coming up on tomorrow, Thursday, at the Carolina Forest Recreation Center from 4 to 6. So this is an open house format where they have easels set up with the different proposed projects. So you can ask questions of staff and you can submit comments there. They are taking online comments. That deadline is coming up February 18th, which is Sunday. So, make sure I wouldn't keep it till Sunday, maybe submit comments by end of the day Friday. You can find more information on the full project list at the link in the chat that I shared. It's the Ride 4 webpage on Horry County's website. Again, they're going to be finalizing this project list over the next few months. We expect it will come up for the first reading at Horry County Council until May. So even though there's this comment period deadline of February 18th, we'll still have some more time to try to convince the Sales Tax Commission to leave these boondoggle projects off of the list. As I mentioned, they have to finalize the ballot referendum language by August, and then assuming Horry County passes the ordinance, it will be on the ballot in November for every registered voter in Horry County to have their say. So with that, we will open it up to questions, and I'll pass it over to Trapper to field those.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Our first question actually came in the chat, and it says, what alternatives does CCL and the others, I guess, conservation communities suggest for I-73 and Cell? Becky, I don't know if you want to take that one.
I can. So as I mentioned, Lake Busby Bypass is one proposed alternative to Cell. That would be at a fraction of the cost. There's also just upgrades to the 701 South corridor between Conway and Georgetown. A lot of the need there could be addressed just by 4-laning 701 South, potentially turning it into a heritage corridor, having some zoning overlays or cultural protection overlays for Bucksport, and even for Georgetown County to consider for Plantersville and Choppy to try to put some guardrails in place for future development. But turning the 701 corridor into 4 lanes could get at some of the increased traffic issues and not have the same impacts to the Waccamaw National Wildlife Refuge, the wetlands, and the community. And then for I-73, like Deborah mentioned, upgrades to 501. The 73 corridor essentially parallels 501. You can already go 65 on 501. If we just upgrade it to interstate standards, we would get at a lot of the same results, just it wouldn't have the interstate shield. But a lot of our needs for 501 traffic happen beyond the intersection with 22, the interchange with 22. So certainly alleviating the traffic on 501 would be felt by the local residents much more strongly than I-73. And, you know, I think there's conversations to be had around increasing the routes for Coast RTA to get cars off the road, or even, you know, considering what Charleston is doing with a bus rapid transit program, potentially going up the 501 corridor. There's certainly opportunities there to alleviate the traffic congestion that do not mean new interstates and new highways. And
All right.
I'll to the rest of the group if anybody wants to add anything to that. Okay.
Alright.
I was typing a question, and Becky, I remember in our meeting with the League of Women Voters, I believe it was Vote Ives that talked about what they apparently had discussed during the Ride 4 committee meetings about Horry County actually kind of footing the bill for the this, as it's not really a Southern Evacuation Lifeline, but for this connector that would propose to alleviate the traffic in the Waccamaw Neck particularly. And so are there ways to have the Horry County identify the needs that really should be on the table for Georgetown County to focus on that area, if that's the, you know, original proposed Southern Evacuation Lifeline seemed to be alleviating the issues in Georgetown County rather than for Horry, and particularly that area where they're talking about would just dump more traffic onto 501 coming up. So is there a way of having that discussion open up where Georgetown County would assume some responsibility for their traffic issues?
Yeah, so as it's proposed, the SC Highway 22 extension, or as it was known, the Southern Evacuation Lifeline, would certainly increase traffic for 17 into the Waccamaw Neck area. Like, it wouldn't stop at the county line. So for the Murrells Inlet and Litchfield areas, I think we'd see increased traffic. And we do have GSATs, the Grand Strand Area Transportation Study, which is part of the Waccamaw COG, or overseen by the Waccamaw COG, the Council of Governments, to look at traffic issues regionally, because again, they don't stop at county lines. The roads don't stop at county lines, neither do the issues. So I definitely think continuing the conversations from the numerous studies that we've had looking at the 17 corridor and some of the recommendations that have come out of those studies. I think Stantec was the most recent one that Georgetown County did with GSATs, to look at how to improve the intersections on 17. There's not really been any conversation from that of how to proceed with potentially the flyovers at 707 and 17. Those are going to be very costly. Why are we talking about $1.56 billion for a new highway when we should be talking about these very costly improvements to our existing roads? But again, I think ultimately to really address the traffic congestion issues, we need to get cars off the road, and we can do that through more sustainable and smarter growth land use practices, through walkable communities, so people don't have to get in their car to drive everywhere to go, to a grocery store, to a restaurant, but instead have mixed use developments where you can, like a market common, where you can walk to a number of restaurants and stores, or walk to a grocery store, rather than having everybody, like an individual, get in their car to go anywhere, or through increasing the funding for Coast RTA to have it be more efficient and useful for local residents. At that meeting that you were talking about, they mentioned one of the routes takes an hour and 15 minutes to do a loop, and they need to have more frequent bus stops, to be able to catch the bus, to make it really convenient for people, so that they don't feel it is in their better interest to just get in their car. So there's no silver bullet, I don't think. I think it's going to take a very comprehensive look at all of the issues for Horry and Georgetown County to address these concerns. But I certainly do not think the Southern Evacuation Lifeline or the SC Highway 22 extension are the answers. And in terms of evacuating the South Strand, I think, again, improvements to our existing roads, rather than sending folks from Georgetown County up 501, where all of Horry County is going to be going, why not send them up to Kingstree, or that way up through Lake City and Pageland to evacuate. Sending everybody to the 501 corridor doesn't make any sense, especially when Horry County's population is exploding and Georgetown's is going to be relatively stable. Why send folks from Georgetown to increase the traffic getting out on 501? But regardless of that, we have had effective evacuations over the last few hurricanes because we've had good warning and they've been able to do the lane reversals. So I really don't think evacuation is a concern. And the Army Corps seemed to agree that the SC Highway 22 extension was not a true evacuation route, and that's why they've made them change that name.
Thank you. And I think you identified the point that I was raising in essence, that there are alternatives, and definitely there could be better plans that are laid out to actually achieve the goals that are being proposed.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Sandra, I see your question as well about improvements to existing roads. Yes, about half of the projects on the proposed list are improvements to existing roads, including widening and upgrading Highway 90, which has certainly been a concern for residents along that corridor. I think David Gilreath, the Deputy County Administrator, had told us it was 53% of the projects are for improvements to existing roads, with 47 just new projects. But I think that percentage needs to be much higher for focusing on our existing roads and improving those before we talk about building anything new. And I'm not sure what you mean about M2 projects. So we can take you off mute if you'd like to clarify what you mean by M2. Well, I'm trying to. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I just saw that there was a mitigation project on that for Garden City, and I didn't know if you knew anything about what that was. That M2, it has 3 projects lumped all together, and I didn't realize they were doing any mitigation with this funding.
For the Ride 4 project?
It's on there. that's on the list?
I don't. I have not looked into that project, but I can certainly research it and try to find some more information for you.
Because I did try to look on that page. It doesn't really say anything. It says $50 million. I got a big bucket.
Yes, that is an issue with just all the information that they've presented with the proposed project list. Is there's not a lot of specificity with it. And some of the projects, there's two in the North Myrtle Beach area that seem to be just road crossings for golf carts, and yet they're about $25 million a piece. So I'd be happy to try to find some more information for that Garden City $50 million project. Like I said, tomorrow evening is going to be the last public meeting, but certainly you can ask questions to the ride4@horrycountysc.gov email. They're taking questions and comments at that. So with that, we are up at the hour. So please do look in the chat for the link to more information for these projects. Please do consider submitting a comment. Emmy shared a link to an online form where you can use our template to submit comments. Feel free to add your own words. And if anybody has any additional questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to any of the email addresses that you received notice of this meeting from, but I will go ahead and put my email in the chat as well. Want to thank everybody so much for attending. We appreciate your attention and would urge you to comment on this proposed project, and we'll be in touch with more information as it comes through over the next several months. So, and with that, unless anybody has any last thoughts, I will say goodbye. All right. Thank you so much.